the statement here is, if hopefully you know what you've come to talk about in our session today. And so last week, I think that's when it went live, ASEE and SEFI issued a joint statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was a call and a pledge for action. And so listed here on this screen are the primary authors are on the right, and then the contributors and acknowledgements that were also mentioned in the document are on the bottom. And I suspect that we have a lot of these people here. And so I hope that those of you who are here will participate in the questions that Bree is going to pose to you here in just a second. So again, I think Bree put the link in the chat box. If you haven't already, then I'll do that while you take over here. And so this slide here is just a summary of like the sort of the summarizing statements within that document. It's much more than these words, but these are sort of the big call outs. And so we're going to leave this up for the discussion with the authors. And with that, Bree, go ahead.
Thank you, Megan. First, I would like to thank the authors for coming and accepting our invitation to talk about this joint statement. Our first question is for Susan Walden, and I hope that you can speak a little bit on the behalf of your team, but there are a lot of statements that talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what motivated you all to create a joint statement about diversity?
Hi, Bree. Thank you so much. And I have to admit that I would say the first 4 months that our task force was working on this project, we were trying to get clarity for ourselves about what the purpose of the document would be. We were the president of ASEE last year, Stephanie Farrell, was working with the president of SEFI, Mike Murphy, and I believe those conversations had started the year prior when Beverly Watford was president of ASEE, also with Mike, that we should have a joint statement. So ASEE had their statement, and then SEFI had come out with a white paper, and I believe they thought that as two very large engineering societies that represent a significant fraction of colonial powers, that it was appropriate for them to do a joint statement. What exactly they had envisioned for that, they couldn't define for us. And so it was really up to the task force to set out what we wanted to emphasize while also keeping in mind what we did not want it to be. And we did not want this to be just another statement that an organization can claim they've done something by posting it on their website. And I turn the floor over to Inesh or Leslie, Eric. I've seen those. I'm not sure who else is here.
Hi, Susan. Thank you, Megan and Bree, for organizing this webinar today. So we also have Anne-Marie Jolie, who was in the writing team, and we have Bill Williams, who was involved in SEFI statement, I think in the last 2 years, and he's been an active member of this working group. We also have Gabrielle Orbeck-White and Gillian Sanders. So if you want to add up something about all of these experience, please do it. Yeah, I think Susan, you've put it brilliantly how these work. We were initially discussing this, and we felt that we had a space to highlight the things that we as a global community should be doing, not only saying, but trying to make this a statement that would lead to some action, to some real concrete actions. But it's hard, right? So I'm really looking forward to the discussions today. I think one of the things we discussed, Susan, was about, are we representing our context as well enough? So Europe is facing some issues. The States, unfortunately, is facing very sad, overwhelming things as well. But we wanted to make sure that these represented the global community. But there's nothing else to say. We're global. I think our issues and struggles resonate across the Atlantic. Please come on board and say what you think about the experience. I don't know if Bill wants to say something about the past experience and the past joint paper.
So actually, it would be great, and it's open to anybody or any of the authors, for you all to talk about, you know, what did you envision resulting from the release of this pledge for action? So what is the action? What type of actions did you all intend with your statement?
I guess I'll speak up. Those who know me, I'm not a quiet individual. I see Susan and a few people smiling. So the statement that you see at the end, as a member, for those who are, it's on the screen, as a member of the global engineering community, I pledge to celebrate diversity, create opportunities, and actively support inclusive environments in which all students, colleagues, and members of the wider society are welcome, respected, and valued. And of course, it goes on. I mean, to me, and some of the conversations I remember when we were going through editing and writing the documents, and I cannot remember, you know, who exactly wrote that section or how it came apart, but I do remember the conversation of, we just don't want it to be a pledge of actions that's going to be repeating something another organization like the Engineering Deans Council was doing. You know, we wanted something that organizations and individuals could use as a pledge. And I do feel like it's written in such of a manner that you can do that, because as a member of the global engineering community, that membership could be a department who wants to commit, or a college, a university, an individual, a research team. I mean, there's a lots of interpretation that could be put there. And that's kind of the thing, like Susan was talking about, we didn't really know where we were taking this to begin with. And we were looking at guidance from ASEE and SEFI leadership, since it is their statement that we just helped write, right? So we wanted to make sure that we were capturing the organization's views and experts' views on the topics.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. However, sometimes with some kind of blank assumptions, people can kind of put a pledge for action on their website, but their actual practices don't match what they're doing. So the intention may be, you know, very good, but how they actually enact the pledge may not match the exact intention. And I'm sorry that I'm stumbling over the words, but I think that it's important for us to think about the strategy behind these types of statements when we create them. And that's what we're here today for. And so in our first breakout session, we want you to talk about what the statement means to you, and how can we use the statement as a springboard to launch more disruptive and intentional change. And once you come back, we're going to actually talk through some strategy, but we really want you to go in your group and talk about what the statement means to you, and for you all to think about how we can use it as a springboard and make sure that our actions match our intentions.
All right, while I'm getting the breakout rooms set up, if there are any questions from the audience, please offer those while I take a minute to set this up. Thanks.
So someone interrupt me if you have a question, but I just wanted to add one more thing, that within our goals, we wanted to think not just about the need for access and inclusion because of, say, diversity. We were trying to walk away from a capitalist explanation or justification for having diverse engineering groups, because one of the things that was really concerning us is that without that engineers need to be taking into more account all of the stakeholders and all of the people that can be impacted. So who they are engineering for, and what maybe some unintended consequences might be for their engineered technologies. That the needs that we weren't, that engineering wasn't something that was happening to people, but was something that includes all people.
Okay, I think I've got we have 5 breakout rooms, and I think I've got at least one of the lead authors in each of those rooms, and so there's like 6 or 7 people per room. So what we're going to do is you're going to access these slides, and you're going to write on each of the slides. So for example, breakout group 1, you're going to take your notes there. You don't need to take notes for the warm-up question. That's just to kind of help you get to know each other and sort of initiate the conversation, but then take notes on the last question. How can we use this statement? And so your groups will be numbered. You'll know which group you are in. Take notes on those specific slides. And then when we come back, we're going to have each group do a really quick report out, and we're going to collectively, that means all of us, working on the notes to start summarizing some of the things that we have to describe a specific strategy, start listing and outlining key actions, and we'll invite people if they want to put their name that they're going to take some of these steps in their sphere of influence, okay? Does that sound good? All right, I'm going to open all the rooms. You'll be in those rooms for about 20 minutes. And so again, take time to introduce yourself, use this as an opportunity to get to meet other people. And you can ping Bree or I if you have any questions. All right, here we go.
Hi, when we came back from the breakout session, I forgot to hit record again, so we missed a little bit of the discussion, and so I wanted to just recap some of the things that we missed. And so when we came back from the breakout sessions, what we asked of participants here was to think about some of the very specific strategies that came up during the conversation. And so the first strategy that came up was around the need to get more Black female engineering professors, and there was a note of a stat that there are 0 full professors in the UK. And so we had a conversation about this. There are some notes that you'll be able to find in the slides. And what we asked of people is to, as we were doing this exercise, to then note their choice to be, held accountable and sort of pledged to this specific strategy, right? So clearly in our, brief time that we had together, we couldn't solve all the problems, and we couldn't go over and determine all the strategies, but we wanted to make some progress. So another strategy that people brought up, or a need, was the need for ongoing training about bias. And while this is certainly really important, one of the things that is important to me is that when we teach about bias, that we stop just talking about bias as an interpersonal kind of thing of like, what is it that I'm saying to you, you're saying to me, what's happening in these sort of micro kinds of messages. But as we talk about bias, that we talk about all bias, right? Both the explicit and implicit kinds of bias, that we talk about the interpersonal and the institutional kinds of embedded biases within our organizations, because that's how things are really going to start to change. Like if I learn about bias and I just start talking to you and telling, with intent to like not send those micro messages, that's great, but it doesn't change the system. And if we want to see this change that we're calling for in this pledge and call for action, we've got to change the system. So we must equip people with ways to see that, right? It's a lens, it's a muscle that we have to learn to develop and to practice to start to recognize how bias is embedded in the policies, procedures, and norms and initiatives that we create. And so the next strategy that came up, and I think that this is where I turned the mic back on or the recording, was a conversation about ways to support neurodiverse learners, and a conversation about how this often gets excluded from our conversations on diversity, where we talk about race, gender, class, ability, disability, and things like that, but we miss this other dimension of identity. And so the conversation did pick back up here. And so what I welcome anyone to do, and this document will stay on the website, anybody can access it, and to think about the ways that they want to work together. And so we didn't do group report outs because we didn't really have that much time, but you can see in the slide notes some of the conversations that people had. In looking at them afterwards, we noticed that Breakout Group 2 had a lot of conversation about how the language is confusing, really pushing the needle and to think like, well, what is next? What's the dissemination plan? And this is something I totally agree with. What is it what's the strategy for making this tool actually grow those legs to make the impact that we want? And so it looks like this is now entrusted on us to figure that out. And so us meaning the big us, all of us. And so again, you can look at this and back to the regular recording.
Hi, Bree. Let me.
The beautiful, perfect norm that those companies are looking for. Many autistic students who would go for the assessment center for a traineeship come back like, I hated it, I froze, I didn't know what was expected of me, I'd never done this before, nobody had told me what to expect, what was expected, I've never done this before, they didn't feel safe. It's like expectation management is so, I think in the whole of diversity, expectation management and explaining why we do stuff, be it on why, I like looking at the principles that everybody should have the same chance of success. It's not the right to success, but the same chances. And I try and look at diversity every time from every angle, is how do I how can I try and ensure that every student and every staff member has the same chance of success and that they're not held back by race, gender. I have no idea if I'm expressing this correctly, but your priority or preference, your whether you talk too much or too little, it should be about what you bring to the table and how you can do the job that they're asking you to do or the degree that you want to study. And everybody knows they have pluses and minuses, and everybody is aware that they need to work on them, but to be constantly told you don't fit the mold, that is not okay. And that is where I have so many of, especially with the risk you have with diversity, which is why I'm far more in favor of the word inclusion, is that in aiming for diversity, you become exclusive sometimes of others. How do you ensure that they also still feel welcome and stay aboard? And for me, that is a very vital point. I see it too often. It's like, well, you can't be a good engineer if you can't work in teams. It's a very generic statement. It's not always true.
Jillian, thank you very much for your thoughts on ways to support neurodiverse learners. I think we've got that captured on strategy 3. We're just about out of time, and Ramon has indicated he wants to share something with us. He asked a bit ago. Ramon, did you want to share something and maybe elaborate on what you posted in the chat? Okay, in like 2 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you for the floor. What are meaning to say about the promote the gap, because here in our university, or more in the university here in our country, there are huge of gap between the university and the industry. That's why more of the students, they have lack of trainings, they have lack of knowledge in terms of the equipment, in terms of actual work in the field, if they are going to have a work. That's why the strategy of the university, one of the strategy of the university is we conduct once a month training related to the industry or related to the field of specialization. Like for example, we are mechanical engineering. We conduct almost every month training related to HVAC and fire protection and etc. training, so that the standard or the requirement for the industry we meet, and we have later on a quality graduates. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks so much, Ramon. Glad that you're here. Okay, so we could clearly talk about this all day. We don't have all day. And so I want to just do a quick wrap up. We can still continue the conversation. I just want to be respectful of the time that people have designated. So I want to again reiterate what Bree said earlier and thank the authors for showing up today. And thank you for your leadership in crafting a document that we hope grows legs and really inspires a lot of people to action. And clearly this conversation is not over. We have so much work to do. And I think that the more that we can talk about this and collaborate and organize in a way that creates a cohesive strategy, the more likely that we're going to be able to see and measure change. And so I want to remind you that this is a series. And so next week, we've got a session, Retracing My Steps, Reflections of a Black Woman Leader in Engineering. We have Drs. Meseret Hailu and Dr. Monica Cox are going to lead that session based on a sort of ethnographic, autoethnographic study that they've done. And so you can register for that, probably the same place that you registered for this one. And so I encourage you to do that. And we've got a whole great lineup of workshops that are coming up. Becky Bates is going to lead with her team a conversation on expanding resources around ethics, DEI for ethics education. And so again, I encourage you to check this out. I'm really excited about who's volunteered to do these sessions for us. And with that, I'm going to close the session. I want to thank all of you for bringing yourself to a session to have this conversation. That's not always easy. It's especially not easy to not solve the problems today, right? Like we want to leave with really, you know, something in hand. And so what I'm going to do is I actually forgot to hit record after the breakout, so I missed some of the conversation, but I'll try to summarize that before creating the final piece. And I'll put this link back up on the website. And so you can access this document, and I hope that you continue to think about and reflect on what you talked about today. And Bree, do you have any final words for the participants?
No, I just would like to thank some of the people who have already signed up as on our accountability pledge. So that's awesome on our first 3 strategies. And feel free to contribute to this Google slide until it's closed, but feel free. And thank you so much for attending. I've really enjoyed this conversation today.
All right, so that ends the hour. If you still had something that you wanted to share from the group, we'll stay on for a few more minutes and keep having this conversation with you. Anything else that really came up for you?
This is Susan. I just wanted to say thank you verbally to everyone, and especially to Megan and Bree for doing so well at organizing these sessions and keeping things moving along. So
You're welcome.
And thanks, yes, thanks definitely for organizing this session, and thanks to all of you who wrote this document and had the political fortitude to get it adopted by 2 big stuffy organizations. In fact, the auto type actually translated SEFI into stuffy, which was really funny. So thanks, Susan and Inesh and Bill and Leslie. Thanks so much.
Y'all take care.